true. Sometimes funny, sometimes it's sick.
Greetings and welcome to the Department of Tangents podcast. I am your host, Nick Zano, and I've got a packed episode for you all today. A couple of months back, I sat down with Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams at a show in Boston, and since their fine new album, Contraband Love, is out this Friday, September 15th, for those of you listening in the future, you are hearing the conversation now. I was very impressed with their opening act, Patrick Coleman, so I grabbed him for a few minutes to speak as well. So this episode includes Campbell and Williams, as well as Coleman, plus new comedy from Sashir Zameda from her new album, Pizza Mind. Patrick Coleman is a transplant from Oklahoma, working as a local musician and a DJ and producer with WUMB, a local Americana station in Boston. His new album, Tree of Life, is officially out on February 18th, 2018, not this fall, as we mentioned in this conversation, but you can hear some of it and help him get it released by looking him up on pledgemusic.com and contributing to his campaign. And if you're lucky enough to catch him live, you might be able to snag a copy like I did. I've had a chance to preview it, and you should be looking forward to that. We're out on the street in front of the club here. You can hear the bus stopping and a motorcycle passing by. We spoke about the new album, Coleman's musical roots, and his unusual rhythmic accompaniment. So here's Patrick Coleman, and then we'll get to Campbell and Williams after that. We're outside the Bright Music Hall. You just opened up for Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams.
Exactly.
And you are Patrick Coleman, correct?
All things are true so far, yeah.
Okay. Well, this is why I always like to come and make sure I see the opening act, is that you often find something you really like. I really enjoyed your set tonight.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it, yeah.
And so you have a new album coming out. When we heard some of that tonight?
Yeah, it's coming out this fall. It's called Tree of Life. We're still working on a firm date, but sometime later this year.
Are you working with a distributor or a label?
It's an independent release, such as The Age. So yeah, I'm doing it all independently, working with a lot of local musicians to record the album, and I'm putting it out myself.
And you moved to Jamaica Plain, just outside of Boston, or a suburb of Boston. Tulsa, Oklahoma, is that correct?
That is correct, yeah, with a couple of stops in between, but I'm originally from Tulsa, born and raised there. I met a girl, she's from Boston. We got married, and we moved up here about 7 years ago.
How have you found the going from Tulsa to Boston?
Yeah, well, it's funny, I had a stop in Nashville in the middle. So Tulsa is great, it's my hometown, it's a very comfortable place, a lot of great music. Nashville is obviously great too. Type of scene. In Boston is sort of somewhere in between, people are pretty friendly. There's a lot of great music here, of course. It doesn't have that same cutthroat edge of Nashville.
Right.
So, it's taken some time, but definitely have been able to find sort of my crew of people and discovered a lot of great music,
You mentioned J.J. Cale, and you played a version of This Land Is Your Land, so you have your Oklahoma, you have your
coming out.
Your roots. Is that what you sort of started out listening to?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the '90s, so I definitely started out listening to like Nirvana and stuff like that, grunge, like everybody else. But very quickly, I think there's a pretty famous sort of Tulsa in my hometown called the Tulsa Sound, pioneered by J.J. Cale.
Yeah.
So you kind of, as a youngster coming up, you hear about that from older musicians. They pass it down, and it definitely informs your playing. A real like mixture of kind of, I guess, blues, kind of the white and black rhythms rubbing off against each other.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear some Townes Van Zandt.
Sure. Oh yeah, I love Townes.
Well.
Yeah. I run a concert series here in town. It's called For the Sake of the Song. So I'm a huge Townes Van Zandt.
Did any of that that Nirvana grunge stuff sneak into your songwriting anywhere? Or into your...
It's funny, for a while I kind of went totally the opposite direction. I was playing solo acoustic all the time. And as I've kind of incorporated back into my sound, I can't help it, man. That grunge, like, distortion sound that's the sound I hear when I think about the electric guitar. You know, that dirty, scuzzy rock sound. So yeah, it's definitely in there, in the tone, I think. You know.
I haven't heard the album yet. Tonight is. Is that reflected in the recording?
Yeah, I think there's a certain rawness to it. You know, that it's not as polished as some other stuff, maybe in like a roots music trajectory.
So. Is this your first album?
Full length, yeah. I put out a couple EPs over the past 5 or 6 years, but this is my first full length album.
What made now the time that you had the songs that you wanted to put this out?
Yeah, that's a good. I have been working with a bunch of great musicians here in the area that kind of had really. I felt like we got something. We were gelling in a way that I felt like I wanted to capture that. I had written a batch of songs kind of quickly. They felt like a cohesive unit, and I had the time, the bands, the resources to say, hey, let's take a shot here. And so we did.
Yeah, I had an experience. I released an album a couple of years ago, and I feel like if I had an album back in college or shortly thereafter when I first started writing songs, it would have been awful.
And that's the thing; it's there forever. Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely released some bad music. Oh no, I don't know. It's all a learning experience, though. But it felt like the right time. Yeah, to make a push. To make a push.
You mentioned playing electric guitar. You have an interesting rhythm accompaniment.
Yeah, when I play solo, I definitely haven't heard too many people doing what I do, but I basically have an old machine. Paired with like a tambourine on my foot, and then I'm playing electric guitar and a Gibson SG over the top of that. And that's something that, we talked about J.J. Cale, that I actually got the idea of using that beatbox because that's what he used to record his first album, or a couple songs on his first album.
I had no idea that was what that was.
Yeah, right. It kind of makes sense when you listen to it after the fact, but I just thought it was a drummer too, just playing real steady, but I he was basically too broke. He couldn't afford a drummer, so he used this and he thought, hey, I'll make some demos and then I'll get an album deal and then I'll release an album. But the record company said, hey man, it sounds great, let's just release it as is.
It did sound great up there. I don't know if it's just the when you put it, you could get a heavy bass through it, but it's
I mean, it's got a cool sound, that beatbox. It's called a rhythm ace is what it is. And it took me a long time to figure out how to use it effectively. I basically stopped playing shows for about 8 months. I played at home. I experimented a lot, and I found that I was getting some cool sounds, and I was like, all right, let's take this out for a spin now.
Yeah, I've got an old Univox from around the same era at home that looks like it should be on the dashboard of a Buick.
I feel about exactly
that like faux wood panel.
And I just think that's so cool. It looks like a piece of equipment. It's not like a computer up there. It's not your phone. You know what I mean? It's like, and I love it. It's very tactile. It's got buttons and knobs, and that's what I relate to. For me to manipulate stuff when I can touch it, as opposed to something digitally.
Yeah. Is it pre-programmable, or is it just all?
It's really like so simple. It's like, you got some different buttons that kind of have different country, shuffle, and then you can change the tempo, and you can activate or deactivate the snare drum and the hi-hat, and that's it. That's your only option. So
sorry for taking so much time talking about the drum machine. I was just excited to see it.
It's like my little secret weapon. Yeah. It's fun.
So you write if tonight's set is any indicator frequently about your family and touring? Are those the two things you would say that are
yeah, it is absolutely right now. And I'm a stay-at-home dad when I'm at home. I stay home with my daughter, who's a year and a half old, 3 or 4 days a week, and then I'll go out on the road, and then I'll come back. So that's my life right now, which is kind of interesting, the difference in worlds. It's sometimes hard to put them together.
Was it hard to sit down? Do you write when you're at home with your daughter? Is it hard to sit down and sing this heart-wrenching song, and your daughter's in the crib right there?
I would say that it's easy to. Some things are hard, some things are easy. It's hard to write lyrics, but she's also a big inspiration lyrically. One thing that I have found with her is that she's really attracted to trance-like music, so it's a great opportunity to practice stuff, and you try to really create this feel that's often gentle or soothing kind of sounds, for her when she's trying to go to sleep. And it's kind of, I found that actually ended up impacting, because I started really trying to work on stuff that loops around and kind of is very hypnotic, I guess.
You ever do what John Lennon did with Julie and let her play spoons or something on the...
Oh, yeah, she loves to. Yeah, man. She has like a little tambourine and an egg to go to town,
How old is she?
She's a year and a half. Yeah. It's so fun to see, like, music is something that's innate to human beings. That's what I found out by having her there. Music and dance. She's not self-conscious about it at all. The flow of the music, and it's really beautiful to see that.
So what should we look forward to this fall when the album comes out? When should people start looking and where?
Yeah, I think around September I have a big tour. Big for me. I mean, I'm going down to into Tennessee, all that, the southeastern United States, and coming back. I think I'll have the album out around that time. We're trying to be patient with it because I feel like we got something special. So we're trying to wait till all the pieces line up together, to really give it what it deserves, because we put a lot of work into it. I mean, it's been basically a year and a half of tweaking these things and getting it together. So, yeah.
It is PatrickComan.com or
PatrickComan.com.
Right, and that's COMAN.
You got it.
All right, thank you very much.
On hell to the hell isn't always a trend.
Find out more about Patrick Coman by visiting his website at patrickcoman.com and look him up on pledgemusic.com to help him get that new album properly released. Now, I'm very happy that this interview happened in time for the release of Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams' new album, Contraband Love. It's a darker album than their self-titled debut release from 2015. Campbell and Williams had watched friends deal with death and addiction, and that found its way into songs like The Other Side of Pain and Save Me From Myself. There's no celebration of rock and roll excess on this album, but it's also not a lecture or a dirge. Campbell and Williams make the kind of music that make you want to get up and let loose, even if, as I mentioned to them in the interview, you are not prone to such things. It's interesting that this episode follows the Valerie June episode. There are similar approaches to the music. You may be singing about darkness, but the end result is always joy. And Campbell and Williams are as delightful in conversation as they are on stage. This interview, which was originally supposed to be a half an hour, and then Williams' throat was starting to get a little froggy, so I was only going to talk to them for a few minutes and then interview them next time they came to town. But they were happy to keep going, so I actually grabbed my list of questions to see what we could cover. And that's when you hear my friend and fellow musician Dickie Krause talk to Campbell about touring with Bob Dylan, which allowed me to jump into my own questions about being a side player. I'd first seen Campbell and Williams as part of Levon Helm's band, and Campbell toured with Dylan for years. After the conversation, stick around for new comedy from Sashir Zameda's new album, Pizza Mind. And now, Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams with a cameo from Dickie Krause.
We're playing the national anthem at Madison Square Garden tomorrow. Can't talk. Like what we're saying,
Right.
They're like, okay.
I've had those nights where you just sit up talking with a friend till 2 or 3 in the morning, even on the phone or something, and the next day, like, your voice is gone, and you're just talking. You weren't even,
It's harder on your voice than singing, talking. True, and a lot of us don't. I don't talk. Yeah. Correctly.
Okay.
Yeah. No, when I had a voice therapist one time, in lieu of having surgery, she was on me about the way replace your speaking voice. Yeah.
So did you adjust your...
The singing was better than the speaking voice.
So did you just start like going on Mel Tillis and singing everything instead of speaking? Or did you adjust?
I should have. No, I didn't make the adjustments. Don't tell her.
I won't. So that was, if you don't mind me saying so, an ass-shaking good time.
Oh, that's wonderful. We don't mind at all.
if I were one prone to shaking my ass.
It would have been shook tonight.
If I didn't have the Catholic upbringing. So we're 2 months out before the new album comes out.
Right.
if people heard the first album, what can they expect from this album?
It's a little deeper in many ways, I think.
And more rockin'.
It's a little more rocky, a little more extreme, whatever. We sort of touched on the country thing on the first record, and there's some stone country music on this.
Yeah, it's diverse.
Record. And then we sort of touched on the rock thing. There's some real rock and roll on this record, and there's more of a blues thing going on too. We just kind of went deeper, and with the subject matter too. A little more, a little darker in some of these songs.
What prompted the darker aspect of the
It's
song?
hard to say.
I kind of called that we had a lot of friends going through, like the opioid epidemic that's going on, and people losing their kids, and people afraid they're about to, it's just, we had one set of friends, kids lost like 6 friends around Christmas.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
one of my best friends, his daughter went through some really rough times, and everything's cool now. It's great, but this was all going on over the past couple of years, and it kind of brought to mind for me my experience with all this stuff, which is years ago. What in my younger days, but all that stuff gets dredged up after a while, and writing about my own addiction was something I never aspired to do, just because, it's done.
Right.
And I just also wanted to avoid, like, the younger people that I'm around that I associate with. I never knew how to tackle this issue with them. You want to keep your younger friends away from any kind of drug nonsense at all. But how do you then? If they ask you about what you did, how do you explain all that? And there's no good way to do it. But what I didn't even want to talk about it, because I didn't want to in any way glamorize it, or make it into some, well, he did it, look at him, so I try to avoid even speaking about it. But then, I was remember as we were going through this with all our close friends and watching them go through this pain, I was remembering how when I went through this, the stuff that helped me was artists' expression of their experience with this thing, and I kind of just opened that door and said, well, then if I go into this dark place and express what I've gone through, maybe that'll help somebody else, in some kind of way, and so then it's worth doing.
Do you remember any particular artist that did it well? You said it helped you to listen to other artists, but there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't. But it was the music I was listening to at the time. That did do.
That's kind of what pulled you forward.
There
right?
was. I mean, I do remember specifically, and I don't know why it even helped me, but Steppenwolf had a tune called "The Pusher."
Yeah, the soundtrack.
Well, that was in the Easy Rider soundtrack.
Yeah.
But it was on their first record too, and that just, which was right around the time I was going through this, and it kind of, what he was saying in that song was, it's cool to be, I mean, don't. I mean, if you're going to indulge in this stuff, just stay away from the nasty stuff, and I, when I was just branding the guy who sells you heroin as an evil guy, in a song, that had an effect on me, it did, and
he was very young.
Yeah, I was
it's really
really young.
sad.
Yeah,
it makes me sad to think about.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people he was hanging with at the time, I think they were like 2 to 3 of them who made it, who didn't die from it.
Yeah. There was this is, you know, the late 60s in Manhattan, you know, and I mean very, you know, the end of the decade, and there was a heroin epidemic going on there that not a lot of people remember, you know, and but anyway, that, you know, you know, and there was some Rolling Stones stuff that I used to just sit and listen to, and then to, you know, to think, I knew I wanted to be a musician. I knew I wanted to do something with my life. I knew that music was gonna pull me through this, because that was something I could wrap my arms around, and it was a goal that would be fulfilling and satisfying, and as I would listen to, you know, just get indulged in this music around me, it just pulled me through.
So this was at the time you were just becoming a musician, so you kind of had a choice?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And, you know, then I had other bouts of addiction with other stuff, you know, and I mean, really up until, I mean, the last thing I had to quit was cigarettes, which was, you know, that's 15 years ago now. And ironically, that was the hardest thing I had to quit too. It was, and
the last thing you had to lean on after all the other things are
gone.
gone.
Yeah. And I, you know, I mean, that's 15 years ago. And if they come on the news tomorrow and say, "Oh, doctors decided smoking is good for you now," you know, I'd be buying cartons again. You know, but.
Now you say this is a deeper, darker album, and you can hear that on it. It's also not a downbeat album at all. I don't listen to it and
that's right,
and want to hang myself.
Good, because there are some of our favorites, you know, that you love listening to it, and at the same time, it's just like you become suicidal. Not really.
Yeah.
No, this is it's fun. It's like, it's all over the map, this record. But that's the beauty of Americana. It's roots, pulling from all those different sources.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to define the different styles on the album, and they all just sort of pour into Americana. You can hear, you know, a New Orleans sort of stomp going on. You hear blues going, but you can pick that apart. It's not like, I don't have the song names down in my head. I've only spent a couple days with the album, but I mean, you could pick out the vocals are bluesy, but the backbeat is more the New Orleans sort of thing. So it's not as if it goes song to song. This is this and this is this. Right. It just sort of, it's elements all in the same song frequently.
Right, that's true, and it is kind of gumbo, you know, and that's the stuff that turns us on, you know, when you, because you respect all these roots styles on their own, and all the disparate styles of American music, but then you love them all so much that you can't limit yourself to one thing, and then you find a way to just mix the feel of each one of these things into one piece of music, you know, and that's. I mean, what the band did, you know, what those guys did, Levon and those guys, you know, and even Bob, you know, Teresa had this experience when she first came and saw Bob about.
The very first concert I saw you play with him, the first time I ever saw Bob Dylan, I just grew up loving all this different stuff, and I guess I thought if I ever, because I just, you know, just love music. It was like the wallpaper around, you know, for a lot of people. But our household, it was just always there. And we played and sang and had it playing all the time if we weren't playing ourselves, and everywhere. It was just always going. And I know a lot of people are that way. I thought, well, if I ever did make a record, how would I decide which genre to even... How would you nail yourself down to one? So when I saw Bob, it was like, oh, you don't have to do that. You can just do it all.
Right,
You know. But then there's the thing that he is Bob Dylan. He can do whatever he wants to do. There's that little caveat. But
well, it's strange you have that feeling at some point, I have to choose. And then you just realize you don't.
Yeah.
yeah, how freeing is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm hoping to catch up with you guys when you come back here in November to
With
sit down
Sean.
when you're feeling, when you're feeling a little better. Sorry that you're feeling a little under the weather.
I'm, after we got through the show, I'm a little better. If you want to take a little more time.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Don't have any snacks to offer you.
That's all right. Now, when did you stop playing with Bob? I'm sorry.
Stop.
It's okay.
When
When
did
did you start playing?
I started in '97, beginning of
Okay.
'97, and
Yeah. I would have saw you. I definitely saw you in January '98 when you played cross-night when it was the Fleet Center. TV Guy.
Oh yeah,
Van
that's
Morrison.
right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thought that was an incredible show.
That was a particularly good tour. That summer with Van. That was Bob was really in his element.
Yeah, I think that was the first time he was actually playing larger arenas.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I took my buddy back to that show. And, he enjoyed it too. Great time all around the game. You guys, and Van.
Oh, that's great. Good.
Yeah.
I just noticed that the refrigerator says headliner on it.
I think there's another one maybe in the other room for the openers. So. Just in case you're wondering.
Just to make anybody else on the bill feel bad
Yeah,
who brought
exactly.
their
This
water.
This you can't have. Yes.
Right, off limits. Do you prefer playing on your own, or do you prefer working as on the side with other musicians? I've talked with people who've done both,
Okay.
who have.
This is an interesting question because my whole career has been I never thought about being like the headliner.
Right.
It's never
Right.
it's never an aspiration.
When I met him, I was like, "Why aren't you singing more? Why aren't you out front?" And we were dating, and I'd go see him. He was playing with Greg Trooper a lot then, and he would do some backgrounds, and he would sing he would pull out Jealous Man or something at the end of the night, and he would do that. And it'd be like, you're front. Why don't you sing? Why aren't you out front? Never been interested in that.
Yeah.
No, I don't really sing. And I would push him to sing more.
And then we started singing together just for the fun of it, and I liked
His
that.
dad sang. His
Yeah.
grandfather is Scottish with the ballads and all that, and sang. And
I enjoyed singing with her, and then we got this opportunity with Levon came up where under that umbrella we all got a chance to get up front and sing, And
Was that the first time you did that?
yeah, first time.
Really on stage?
Yeah.
Your first album was all instrumentals.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But Teresa and I started this thing we do while we were working with Levon and got to hone it with the Midnight Ramble band and Levon and I just something I never thought I always my only ambition was only ever to be the best musician I could be wherever that led me. It didn't and I liked being the guy back there just playing the guitar, or the steel or the fiddle or whatever. I liked playing the instruments, but when we started developing this thing organically, it was this whole other avenue of expression that really turned me on, and so now. I don't want to quit backing other people up. I still want to play with people, but this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And as far as fulfillment is concerned, and so I just want to, as I say, keep walking down this road till it leads us off a cliff, but I just want to keep doing it.
Yeah, because there's the aspect of the pressure being off. I've talked to some people who do both and say, well, I can, if I'm playing with somebody else, I can just react to them, and
Right.
I step up for 40 seconds, play my solo,
Right.
and step back.
Yeah.
But then now, a show like tonight, you're out there and it's all on you. Everybody's looking at you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, fortunately, more of them are looking at her than they are at me.
That's
so
nice.
that's
Nice try. That's not true.
Well, it must be somewhat dizzying to. I mean, you were just on Colbert with Emmylou Harris.
with Emmylou, yeah.
And then you step right off of that, and the next day you're on your own tour.
Right.
Is that how it went? Was the very next day you were?
Very next day.
It was a little bit of relief to just have to come in with a few lines here and there, but it's so the pressure is not on you. It's just fun making the music, but it's just fun making the music with us too. But there's some pressure, like the business world of it.
Yeah.
You know, when it's just you do have to keep up with that stuff more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How does the relationship work creatively? How do you sit down and work together? Do you set specific time? This is work time. This is non-work time.
Sometimes we have to. Otherwise, we'll just keep. Wait. I've got to finish this one other thing. Before we sit down. So sometimes I'll ask to schedule it, so I just know how the day's going to go. So when you have time to get your other things done.
But sometimes it's just inspiration in the moment too,
And sometimes it's really fun collaboration, and sometimes it's fractious.
Yeah.
You did say you were working out your problems in front of the crowd.
That's good. Yeah.
We'll tussle over a particular choice.
When she momentarily forgets that I'm right all the time, it gets a little wiggy.
But then you have songs where you mention, which song was it you said, I don't know why.
I don't want to know when you wrote it, and I don't want to know why.
Right.
Did you love me at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that just a joke, or is there something in the back of your head going, you wrote
Yeah.
you wrote
Yeah, there's something in the back of my head, in the front of my head going, what? What was that about?
That is actually the first song I wrote specifically for
I don't want to know.
for her to sing, and I mean,
Dang.
I
Shoot, Larry.
yeah, well, yeah.
Just pretend that's about some of the past girlfriends. I know a few.
What's it like to write for someone else's voice if you're writing for Teresa's voice?
It's a muse, So it gives you a place to start and or a place to reach for, and so you're not just blindly. It helps you solidify your musical thoughts. If I hear her voice doing it, then it's easier to put parameters around the melody that you're trying to come up with, or even the subject matter, the title song of this next record, Contraband Love.
Mm-hmm.
That melody sort of came to me, and from when I first was hearing that melody, I was hearing her singing it, and then I actually, in every phrase I wrote, I would hear in my head how it would sound coming out of her mouth, and that was it helped me actually finish the damn song,
But then you have to sing it. So when you hear the words,
Sometimes I'm like, I'm not singing this. You sing it.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of hear each other and weigh in about, the subject matter I may think is better on him, but he wants me to,
Mm-hmm.
Goes back and forth like that. It kind of, it'll tell you what it wants to be.
Yeah. But then you're writing it in her voice, but not as her.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. No, not
Did I put you on the
necessarily.
spot there? Is that something that you'd rather not
No,
answer?
there's a song or two on here. I was like, I'm not singing that. I ended up singing it, of course.
Which one was that?
I'm not telling.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's these songs just come, you know, and you don't. I mean, songwriting is really difficult for me. It's really difficult. There's not. There are people that can just write songs all day and good ones, you know, and it I'm okay with melodies. They come pretty fast and pleasantly, you know. But thinking of something to write about and then actually sitting down and writing it in a way that hasn't been written before, or in a way that's interesting, or in a way that's personal, or you know, that's hard work.
And when you're performing Americana music, there's also the temptation of, well, why write this song if I can sing the Johnny Cash song, or I can play this old folk tune, and it's not. It's a genre that sort of lends itself to interpretation and cover more than a lot of other.
Yeah, but then
it's true,
that's not.
But then you're not fulfilling your potential, you know. I keep telling myself when I'm struggling writing a song that the alternative is not writing a song. So and that's not an option, you know. Okay, so then do the work, you know, because I obviously have gotten to a point where I need to be able to express myself that way, as difficult as it may be, you know. And so just do it. Just get out there and do it, and do the hard work, you know.
You two met playing music. I've seen you say that before, but I haven't heard you say the circumstances. So what was the?
I needed a band for this little thing I was doing in the Bottom Line, which no longer exists in Manhattan. Where's all the live music in Manhattan? Anyway, and I didn't know it was a real country thing I was doing, and I didn't know any country players in Manhattan, and I thought it was an oxymoron. And a friend of a friend got the band for me, and he was one of the guys, and he was playing pedal steel, and I thought I was just going to be up a creek because I just didn't think they'd be able. It was some Hank Williams stuff, and you know, you need to be inside it. I just didn't think. And I knew he was from New York, and he's playing pedal steel. He was really inside the music, and I was like, "You're saving my life. How, when, why did you learn pedal steel? You know, he's from New York." And it was really kind of for me to hear him first of all, and then that night when we got to the gig and I saw he was all dressed up for the gig, I was like, oh, he cleans up nice too. It was I had called off a wedding a few months before that, like down to the wire, like Runaway Bride almost called off the wedding. Big wedding. And then I met him a few months later, and it was just it. I mean, I knew before we ever had a date that this was it. This was it. Yeah.
But the musical chemistry was there first?
Yes, for me, I heard him playing first. Yes. I didn't even see him. I was so nerved out with what I was doing. And I was just like, whoever you are saving my life, you know, on that pedal steel.
Yeah, and to me, the combination of her musical sensibilities and the way she looked, it was like, I remember we met then, and it was a while before we saw each other again, but she came into a club where I was playing, and I'm standing on stage playing, and Teresa's out in the audience, and I said to the bass player in the band, I said, see that girl? I said, I'm going to marry that girl. And that was it, you know, and it was maybe a year later we were married. So.
But the music was a prerequisite. Do you think you had to click musically?
Oh, yeah.
To click personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too it's just too big a part of both of our lives. And growing up, his mother, like there was music at our house all the time. It was the same at his house. His mother played everything from opera to Jimmy Rogers. You know, he heard it all in his apartment, and for us, it was just all around. My brother and I are listening to everything coming out of Memphis on the Top 40 radio, which wasn't just. I mean, they played some really cool stuff back then, at that station in Memphis, and we got, you know, we had rockabilly and Jackson and country coming out of Nashville, Dolly Parton Porter Wagner Show, and the Wilburn Brothers and Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. We'd quit working early on Saturday to come in and watch this stuff on TV. And my parents took me to the Opry, the Grand Ole Opry, once when I was really little. That was like going to Mecca for us. And yeah, Muscle Shoals, a couple hours, not even down south of us, and you know, so I'm halfway between Memphis and there. We're just surrounded by it. And my grandparents played music all the time. We would take a radio to the field to listen to music in the field. You know, it was So it was so. It was like coming home to be with him because of the way his passion for the music was the same as the way
I heard you say once that you didn't have a lot of recorded music that you listened to as a kid. It was mostly what your family was playing. So where does it come in that you think, well, maybe I can do this for a living?
I think the desire was inside me to do it. They brought me up to do it, not realizing that's what they were bringing me up. I mean, they had me singing solos at church when I think she said I was 4 when they put me up and sang my first solo. I don't ever remember not singing in public, you know. It's just, I don't remember ever not singing. It's just like breathing to me, you know. So, I didn't think, okay, there are all these people who are from that area. Eddie Arnold, the Tennessee plowboy, grew up 30 minutes from me. Tina Turner grew up not very far down the road from me. Carl Perkins is out of Jackson. Elvis is out of Tupelo in Memphis. You know, just across the river was Levon. And of course, I didn't know who they were at that time, but just a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people who came out of that, but I didn't equate that. To me, it was like somebody from where I'm from, the Cotton Patch, you know. People like us don't get to do that. It didn't occur to me that those were the people who were doing it, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis. And it was a whole lot of don't get above your raising. You didn't want to hear, who does she think she is? You know, you just, that kind of crab bucket syndrome a little bit. And yet they would tell you could go do B, but something just made you feel like we just don't get to do that. Really. And what threw me for a loop was when I first heard, when Sean Colvin came out with her first record, and Julie, we got Julie's, was it her first record? In the mail. And okay, it's our fault. And that just, it threw me for such a, it shattered me. Not only artistically, which it did, but it shattered me because it showed me that a peer could do it. That meant I should be able to do it, but I didn't have that kind of chutzpah or belief in myself I knew I could sing like the people on the radio. I knew I could, but I just didn't think I was allowed to do that. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, well, I've heard comedians say that a lot too. I interview comedians a lot, and they'll say, "Well, I was always funny. I just didn't know I was allowed to get up and do this in front of people."
Yeah, it's a strange. It's a kind of.
So I gotta cap things off because you guys.
I'm sorry, I took up so much of the time there.
But just in closing, that you're on your second album now. Are you where you want to be as a musical and creative unit? Is there something you're searching for, a sound or a spirit that you have in mind that you
That's interesting.
want to get to?
Not. Yeah, well, for me, I just want to make this thing as good as it can be, you know, and that's never ending. That's something. It's a never-ending quest. Because
that's part of what's interesting about
yeah, that's right, and that's
together.
why it's so cool, because it's always something to strive for. And I think this record is better than the last record. I think where we are, our thing is deeper than it was when we started doing it. It's going in the right direction. It's developing organically as it should, and I'm anxious to see how far we can take this thing. And you know, we're not going to beat Jay-Z and Beyonce. You know, that's not going to happen. But that's fine. That's fine. As long as we can honestly express ourselves, and there's somebody that wants to hear it, and we do it to the best of our ability. That's a success story right there.
I think that I can't even answer that until if I would ever. Okay, you know, I was in theater. I took the detour to study acting because I took the music for granted. I just always sang, and I had one foot in this door always. But I stopped and went into like legit theater. And I would leave guts on the stage as an actor. Utter courage about that. Utter guts on the stage. You give it all. With the music, I'm not going to feel totally honest until I go ahead and let myself write something. But it's so scary because it's one thing to interpret somebody else's words as an actor, as a singer, but to put my own stuff that he's been willing to put out there, like with this record, where he's made himself go deeper. Like after he finished one song, maybe it might have been the last record even, he says, out of the blue, he had struggled to finish it, and he finally finished it, and out of the blue he goes, I just feel violated.
And that's where you want to be as a musician.
And whenever I've made an attempt to let myself, let the subconscious go down on the page, you know, it freaks me out because the stuff that comes out that is honest, I don't want to know it that much. You know, it's like I don't want to know this, and I don't want to tell. I don't want to show other people. And if I don't want to admit it about myself, you think I want to share it with the public? It's like airing your dirty laundry.
And if she would let that go and come out, it would be the greatest song you ever heard, is what I think.
But as far as goals, you know, where we want to be, I feel like if I don't let that voice out, that inner thing out, that would be the ultimate to me, to see where that would be true courage.
And
I
then
guess.
You'll be the one saying, I don't want to know when.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
wrote this.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry to keep you a little bit later.
No,
Great
we gave it to you. No.
Great to
really,
meet you.
really enjoyed it. Yes.
Hell to the hell isn't always a trick.
Thanks again to Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams for giving me the time after their show. I hope Teresa's voice held up for the next few days of shows. Their new album, Contraband Love, is out Friday, September 15th. You can find out more about that on their website at larryandteresa.com, and that's Teresa with no H, spelled Teresa. And thanks also to the Brighton Music Hall for letting me record there. And to play us out, this is a track called Diversity in Film from Sashir Zameda's new album, Pizza Mind. I got to see Zameda at this year's Women in Comedy Festival a few months back. If you get the chance to see her either doing stand-up or performing with other people doing improv, you should definitely do that. The new album is available on vinyl now. Here's Sashir Zameda.
I am glad that there are more diverse characters in sci-fi now. It's so great, because it's so important that we see ourselves in the future. we just gotta know that we made it. I remember watching the Jetsons and being like, what happened to us? What genocide happened? We're not anywhere? I watched Star Wars Force Awakens when it came out, and it was so wonderful to see a female character and a black character just go on an adventure, and there was no mention of their gender or their race. Like, there are no winks to camera like, she's strong for a girl, or like, wow, that black man can actually afford a drink in this bar. Like, nothing like that. It was great, and I loved it. It was a little tainted because when the trailer came out for that movie and the stormtrooper took his helmet off and it was a black man, people lost their mind. Bunch of racists online being like, no. Not my stormtroopers, no. All my stormtroopers are white. It's like, what? We've never seen them take their helmets off before. They could all be black for all we know. It is the dark side. But it sucks. Like, I hate when people like just want to keep the division even in fictional things. It's wild. There are some black actors who are in a lot of sci-fi things. Zoe Saldana is an actress who's in a lot of stuff. But they keep painting her a different color. Poor girl. It's like the studio's like, don't worry, she's not black, she's green. Like money. I remember there was a rumor that Idris Elba could potentially be the new James Bond, which would be great. He's so suave and smooth, and that should be the only requirement for that job. And some people got upset. One very vocal person was Rush Limbaugh. And he said that a black actor playing James Bond is the equivalent of George Clooney playing Barack Obama or Kelsey Grammer playing Nelson Mandela. And the problem with that analogy is that Barack Obama and Nelson Mandela continue to influence our culture and change society. And James Bond is a fictional character. It doesn't matter. He could be a goddamn horse. It does not matter. I'm gonna make my own sci-fi escapism film for people of color. And it will be so simple. It'll just be where we have a black president who isn't more disrespected than any other president in our country, where everyone has the equal opportunity to jobs and healthcare and education, and where law enforcement in this country actually protect everybody in the country. And that's it. And I'll throw a dragon in there or something so people actually go see it.
Neil Young.